Tēnā koutou katoa. Can everyone hear me at the back without the microphone? Ko Paul Kizoho. Ko Aoraki Te Maunga. Ko Tekapo Te Awa. Ko Te Moana Nui a Kiwa Te Moana. Ko Te Cuba Te Waka. Ko Timaru Te Whenua. Ko Pākehā Te Iwi. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome and thank you all for coming here together to remember and to celebrate a man of many names. First given to the world as Gregory Raymond Johnston, son of Julie and Ray, brother to Kim and Kelly. We all knew him as a unique specimen who followed his own path and was never contained within the boundaries set by others. He explored the edges. I met Greg on the cusp of our teenage years, and we were like two half-full vessels pouring the contents of our minds into one another, mixing and blending to make the alchemy that would turn our very base selves into something much shinier and weightier. Greg was always looking for the nuggets of gold that were there in the world to find. He was a voracious and discerning reader. He knew that others before him had described the mental territory he wanted to explore. So, as a boy, while the rest of us were still with comics and looking for copies of Playboy to get our hands on, Greg truly was absorbing mind-expanding literature. And as soon as he found it, he also wanted to create it. "I am going to be a writer," he declared. He was like that with so many of his passions. As soon as he discovered windsurfing, he was going to make his own boards and sails and set himself up to do it. He truly believed in himself and his abilities. He knew that he could do it as well as anyone had done it before. Luckily, this self-belief never translated into one of his greatest passions, though, music. Although he had encyclopedic knowledge of the great music of the 20th century and could tell of the influences and connections that could make the songs that he loved, he couldn't hold a note. But he had the rhythm and he had the funk within him, and he brought great music to my life from day one, as he did with all his friends. And thanks, Mikey, for some of that beautiful music that he would have loved right there. So it was at those early years at school that Greg became Rock to me, forever after. It started with a very base nickname derived from John Stone. He was called Bog Rock. It's a long shot. And a lot of people heard Bog Rot. He didn't like that at all, so he gave it some artistic shortening and created Rock. And I know him like that forever to this day. When he started traveling, he took on a new moniker. He was ahead of his time in believing that he might need a different identity to perhaps, avoid unwanted attention from, was there social media back then, or I don't know, other people maybe. So he invented James O'Rock. Let's call it a pen name. He then absorbed Fitzcarraldo, named for a character played by the mad genius actor Klaus Kinski, another of Rock's edgy inspirations. Finally, he was called Kiwi when he moved to the States, although I am told that most Americans think of kiwis as small, brown, hairy fruits, and Rock wouldn't answer to any of those. So it is this complex man of many names and many facets that we remember and we mourn today. Because Rock lived most of his life far away from here and our connections were sporadic, it's easy to imagine that he is still out there, at large. But he is gone. A huge man, a huge character, and he leaves a huge hole. There will be no more inspiring and hilarious and outrageous conversations, no more adventures into the outdoors or onto the dance floor or out into the reaches of the psyche. We will have to hold on to the memories we have. And I give thanks for the times that we had, for the inspiration, for pushing me way out of several of my comfort zones, for the cautionary tales of daring do. Rock gave me plenty of life lessons, often by showing me what I shouldn't do. He had no fear. And I will miss you, my brother. And I say to you what you always ended our conversation with. Peace. So that's just my introduction to today. I'll be here again to introduce people, and there will be others to talk about their experiences with Greg, with Rock. And at the end, anybody who would like to say some brief words about their memories of Greg is welcome to come up also. I'm sure the microphone's good. I like to project. So I'd like to welcome up Kelly, and I'll see you later. Oh, Kelly and Kim.
We're very much the conservative end of the family. So anyway, hello everybody. I'm Kim and this is Kelly and we're Greg's sisters. So we would like to give you all a taste of Greg's life as we knew it, taking you through some of his achievements and experiences and tales of some of his adventures. I say as we knew it because he had a very big life, and sometimes we wouldn't really have much of an idea of where he was in the world or what he was doing, and even less of an idea of what he was up to. So we would get the highlight reels initially by the random phone call, and then emails and social media kind of helped as the years went on. So, Greg was born 30th of July 1967 in Oamaru. He had 2 blissful years of soul child adoration until I came into the family when Mum and Dad were living in Perth. Apparently, as soon as I was old enough, he had me twisted around his finger running around after him, which was a theme he repeated many times in later life, attracting a number of younger women into his life to dote on him. We had a pretty carefree childhood. We used to spend a lot of time in the pool, both at home in Morgans Road and with the cousins at Denny and Rex's. Building huts out the back, plenty of time at the yacht club in Timaru, riding bikes. We had trying to rebound each other off the trampoline, fights over things that were very important at the time that I never won until I discovered the secret power of the kick. And then I got in trouble, even though he started it. So he was super intelligent, and as Paul said, he was reading way above his age level, and he loved to read about adventures and explorers. He was so sure he was going to be an explorer, he bet me $100 that he would find the Yeti by the year 2000. We even had a contract. He signed, wrote it up, and Mum signed it. He never paid. His intelligence meant he got very bored with primary school, and he would get into trouble with teachers. He skipped Form 1 in an attempt to keep him challenged, but I think he's done it pretty easy still. He countered that, I think, with getting involved in heaps of different sports. He was involved in motocross, sailing, and windsurfing in the early years. He loved being out on the sea, and he mastered the ability to read the wind in a way that I could never, and mildly optimistic. He came alive with the physical and mental challenge of all his sports. And speed was a love which endured throughout his life. He first studied mineral technology at Otago University. Perhaps the explorer in him drove that decision, I'm not sure, but he loved the life and the freedom more than the study. And he got seriously into windsurfing and snow skiing and met lifelong friends at university. He took a year out after that to travel the country and lived mostly in a tent, I think, for that year. I'll never forget him taking off in that old station wagon, absolutely full to the brim of stuff. And probably stuff that Mum and Dad didn't notice. It was just off. He went back to Otago after that year off, had a completely different focus. English and phenomenology of religion was his choice then, and I think that was the start of many years of his study into different ways of spirituality, and also a formalisation of the desire to write. I mean, by that stage he'd been writing short stories and he'd begun a novel, but I think that was probably his formally really getting into it seriously. I went to visit him in Dunedin a couple of times when he was there, and it was an eye-opener for me. His flat was just horrendous. Anybody here who flat of the Dunedin, but oh my god, the kitchen alone should have been condemned, and there was the stairs, there was no banister on the stairs, it was just kosher. But during this time, when he was in Otago, he got into the bungee jumping in the sort of early stages of bungee jumping, I think. And he took that love with him overseas and undertook some very crazy jumps over the years, which some of you will know more about than me. But formal study didn't hold him very long, and he took off to travel the world. And his ventures took him so many places, more than we ever knew, I'm sure. We know he went to Calgary for the Winter Olympics, he was in Europe, and he had some issues in Paris that involved a new passport and some cash.
So he first tried paragliding in the mid-80s in Queenstown. He initially was into it as a way of getting down after climbing. In about 1987, he moved to Jackson Hole in the States, and he lived there for about 14 years. He was skiing, bungee jumping, and he got more into his paragliding then. In the latter part, he would head to Europe paragliding in the summer. He introduced a lot of people to bungee jumping over there, and one of his friends told me some horrific things that they did of a bridge over Bitch Creek. One involved jumping with weights and dropping them at the bottom so the rebound would take them back up above the bridge. During this time, he began writing articles and selling photos to flying magazines, and he became one of their regular reporters. He called himself a journalist, photographer, and artist, and just this year formally launched a new website with a blog. He got more into paragliding, and he began competing about 1996 in Venezuela, and eventually in the New Zealand Nationals and the World Championships. And one of his goals was to represent New Zealand at the Worlds next year. He moved to New Orleans around 98, 99, as well as became well known as the go-to person for knowing where the best music was to be going on at any time. I actually spent time with him in 99, not long after he moved there for one of his birthdays. So we got to see Louisiana and Mississippi States by jumping out of an aeroplane and parachuting to the ground with a large southern cowboy attached to me in a tandem jump. That was the kind of stuff that we would regularly, have experiences with Greg. It was never a dull moment. New Orleans will always be fondly cemented in my memory for great jazz music that I had never really listened to before, especially the trips to the Federation Hall to hear the magic of live jazz music in such a small surrounding. Burning Man was a big part of his life since '99, and fed his need for art, music, and community. He built an art car, which you will have seen up on the pictures, along with a number of his friends, which was a school bus, and they converted it to look like a Mississippi riverboat, and they called it the Lady Sassafras. I've only seen the photos and I've heard the stories, but the legend lives on. In 2001, he went to the Sierra Nevada mountains in Spain for the World Champs, wrote his first article for the Cross Country magazine based on this. He then got into snow kiting and kite surfing and became a feature editor of Kite World magazine. He bought a house in the Dominican Republic, which is in the Caribbean, in 2002. It's a cool house, it's a round house with 3 levels. Did a lot of kite surfing and motorbiking there. And in 2006, I travelled to Kawerete, where his house was, again for another birthday celebration. And I stayed with Greg and Rob Whittle in the roundhouse for a couple of weeks. It's interesting. Greg tried to teach me to kite surf, and that resulted in me skidding along the beach in my bikini, taking off large pieces of skin on the sand. And that was not ideal, and I never tried it again. But what a fabulous place the roundhouse was. It was so incredible. Greg was in his element with one of his best mates, Rob, motorbiking and kite surfing all day.
So he married Laurie on the 1st of April 2006 in New Orleans, in Preservation Hall, which is an iconic New Orleans building. Yes, it was April Fool's, and it was on purpose. It was a date that was, you could remember. But then they had an amazing party on the 4th of May 2006, and it was to coincide with Jazz Fest. He had the school bus, another school bus, another one. We took the school bus from his house to the party, and it was full of crazy, amazing people dressed up in the most amazing costumes. They really know how to dress up in New Orleans. It's just like, we just don't have any idea. It was just a whole nother level of education for us. His writing became more of his life, and when he began real research into psychedelics, he got quite serious into research and spirituality, and published his first book, Tryptamine Palace, in 2006. Then he published The New Psychedelic Revolution in 2018, and then a book of short stories, which there's a copy of here, called Under the Influence. So his research in writing led to him becoming a respected member of the alternative culture movement, and he gave many lectures on really amazing places all around the world on psychedelic culture. In 2014, after the arrival of Kelly's 2 boys, we decided we needed a challenge, and somehow this became to complete the New York Marathon. It was the first time, and we couldn't get out of it after Greg agreed to come and meet us in New York. And it was the first time in 10 years the 3 of us had all been together, and it was just an amazing time. He showed us a view of the city that we wouldn't have seen as tourists, and we did an awful lot of reminiscing. It was really good. And I'm not quite sure what year it was, but he got more inspired into paragliding after he got his green card, and they started achieving 200-mile flights, and he started racing again at that point. He got really close to the 200 miles, achieving 198.5 miles, which is 318 kilometres, and at that point setting New Zealand open distance record, which he didn't even know until he got back sometime. And then he spent a lot more time after that in South America, and in 2018 he actually set another new New Zealand distance record of 384 kilometres in one flight. I mean, hours and hours in the air. It's just incredible. I don't know if it was pointed out, I mean, on the back wall, that's actually a wing, a paragliding wing that one of his friends has bought and put up. It's just so 6 years ago, he met Jessica and her son Noah in Colombia, and they were together until until now. I know he had plans to eventually move back to New Zealand to his property in Eska, in Hawea with Eska. She's training to be a physio, and I'm pretty sure that she would have had her work cut out, keeping him moving after all the damage he'd done to himself over the years. But I think that was part of the plan. She told me that he proposed to her on the phone during lockdown, and but he was supposed to ask her again in person when they finally got to see each other. But she was in Colombia and he was in the States, and they weren't allowed to be together. And there's an engagement ring in New Orleans waiting for her. When we got the call early in the morning on the 25th of August, telling us Greg was missing, while paragliding in Nevada, he'd already been dead for 2 days. But this call started 25 days of anxiety, constant worry and stress for us all. That 3 weeks that I spent in the States looking for Greg were at the same time awful and enlightening. The people involved in the search were incredible, and the effort and expertise was absolutely mind-blowing. People from all over the world came together physically and digitally to help. People who loved him and those that didn't even know him. It really restored my faith and community. I heard stories about Greg that I'd never known and met some amazing people that knew him better than I did. Greg certainly wasn't perfect, but he was loved and respected by so many for such a variety of reasons. It makes me very sad to realise now that I didn't appreciate the breadth and depth of him until it was too late. We'll miss him every day, and although we didn't see each other regularly, he will leave a lasting and loving memory. Our big brother, the firstborn and the only son. When he was found, it was such a profound sense of relief for me. I didn't have to worry anymore. He was gone, but he was found.
So now some friends of Rox would like to say some words. Jen, do you want to come up first? I made it work for you.
Thank you. Hello everyone, my name's Jen Nolan, and I'm trying not to cry. I was very lucky to be Greg's friend, and I've sort of talked a lot lately with Paul and other friends about Greg over the last few months, and I think what was so lovely about my friendship and many of our friendships with Greg was, you know, the fierce intellectualism and kind of competitiveness Greg brought to any conversation. He really kept you on your toes. I know some of you still keep me on my toes, but he really kept me on my toes. And he always called me Nolan. And it wasn't always in a flattering kind of tone, I have to tell you. Look, I can't remember exactly when I met Greg or the day I met him, but it was in Jackson Hole. And as his sisters have told us, it was during the period of his life when he was routinely chucking people off a bridge in Idaho. I was not keen. I said no thank you quite a few times to that offer. But it's fair to say that Greg's reputation preceded him. I knew quite a lot about him before I met him. And you know, I think the same as Paul said, you know, when I met Greg, an intense conversation started that lasted, you know, right through till the last time I saw him, which was luckily enough in 2016 when he was living in New Orleans. And I rang him, you know, before I left New Zealand and said, what would you like, Greg? I was thinking, would you like a nice bottle of Pinot Noir, or what would you like? No, Greg just wanted Vegemite and some crunchy bars. So you can take the boy out of Timaru. Yeah, he, like I said, he always used to call me Nolan, and we had an American friend who was very keen on Kiwi girls, and I sort of dated this guy for a while, and Greg would snort and go, oh, poor old Tim, he loves Kiwi girls, and he got Nolan. Or when two guys were having a fight at a party we were having at the Simpson House, which was an infamous house we both lived in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, with a whole bunch of cast of characters out of Cannery Row almost. We used to go dumpster diving at the local supermarket and make absolutely incredible food out of it all. Anyway, we were having a party and these two guys got in a fight, and I was wearing it was a dress-up party, of course, and I was wearing a gown I'd found at the Browse and Buy in Jackson Hole, which was worn by the 1966 Miss Michigan, and I decided I was going to break up this fight in my gown. And you know, from the sidelines comes this growl, "Get Nolan out of there, will ya?" I had some amazing adventures with Greg. You know, his fearlessness is probably matched equally by my trepidation, but he pushed me to do incredible things like powder skiing through trees, or you know, cross-country skiing in the middle of the night to hot pools in the backcountry between Teton and Teton High Country in Yellowstone. One night we got stuck there actually because this famous alpinist we'd been with forgot to put antifreeze in his radiator, and so when we got in the car it didn't go. It was 20 degrees below zero. We were 10 miles, I think it was, to the nearest lodge. But there was a full moon and there was great conversation, and eventually someone came past on a skidoo, thank goodness. But you know, I had moments like that with Greg, and always the conversation was the thing that would get you through. I used to talk to Greg a lot about his writing and about poetry, and not always in the most complimentary terms, I have to say. He was someone I loved, but I used to roll my eyes at a lot, to be fair. I'm sure many of you might have shared that perspective. But I thought, really, I had to write Greg a poem. He always used to say that I was very, I think he thought I was cheesy, and I think he thought I was very unsophisticated because I liked poetry that rhymed, and his was far too sophisticated to rhyme, of course. So Greg, I've written you a poem that rhymes. Greg said, I didn't like his poetry because it didn't rhyme. Actually, it was more that I was just a little bit like that at that time. There he was, so large, thrashing through, middle finger to fear held high. Those pale blue eyes, seeking, scanning the horizon and above the skies. Born a year and a day apart, my friend and I, like cosmic, terrible twins, ready for mischief and for him to fly. I know, you think this is very cheesy, but unfortunately, mate, I've got the last words, and I'm going to use them freely. Sometimes as you barreled through, you left a mess. Sometimes you'd stop, make gnocchi, and show us your gentleness. It's so hard to believe I'll never hear you disparage me again. But maybe in a quantum sense, you'll be keeping up the refrain. Finally, all the songs you loved, the Indians, the whoops, the cries, linger on in our dances and your pale blue eyes.
So beautiful.
Mikey?
Thank you. Hi everybody, my name's Mike Fall, and it's very nice to be able to stand here and talk about Dear Rock. He's let's get my bit of paper ready here. Now I first met Rock or Duncan, who's here today, and in Telluride, and he walked into the condo where we were, and you know, very immediately taken by his sort of presence. You know, he had large feet, strong stature, comfortable in his skin, clear blue eyes, and this sort of assured grin. You know, this sort of optimistic mischief, which is exactly what he was and what he carried on to be. And he had a sort of a sense of fearlessness that Paul talked about, and that anything was possible, really. And that was really really refreshing to meet someone like that, and we became very warm friends, and his whole approach to everything was just fantastic and alive. And in that spring, Greg and Di's here today, Duncan and Hugh and I, we went down, we met up in New Orleans for the Jazz and Heritage Festival. And in 1989, it's considered to be the greatest year of the Jazz and Heritage Festival. And Greg would often tell me on the phone how musicians would still talk about what an incredible lineup that we saw and how blessed we were. And as Kiwis, we just had never seen anything like it. We'd heard of these sort of people, and it was truly something. And we saw, the legends, the living legends over 10 days in their prime. And there were 2 long 3-day weekends, and they danced from 9 until 5, and everyone was the same, everyone billed the same, and you dance in the big fairground. And we saw Bobby Blue Bland and Irma Thomas, Dr. John Lee Hooker, just all these phenomenal people. We saw Boogie Swamp music and Gregory music and Zydeco music, and we danced and and it was amazing. It was such free abandon, and when our legs were falling off, we'd end up in the gospel tent with a fan, just fanning ourselves away, and wonderful choirs clapping, and it was just so uplifting and amazing. So we couldn't really get enough of this, and there were these night shows that started at midnight, and they were just something else in the tent down by the river, by the Mississippi, and it was 2,000 people in these small tents, and it was just incredible. And we saw on the first night Miles Davis and Wynton Marsalis, which was incredible, and the Neville Brothers and Santana played until dawn. And then we went back home for 2 hours, and we went back to the fairground, and we danced all day. And not only did Rock have size 13 feet, he had really big, strong hands, and he would massage our calves. We had all these knots in our calves. He was dancing on, and it was just absolutely exhilarating to do it each day. And one night we were blessed to see the Staple Singers, Pop Staple and his daughters, and Al Green. This beautiful singer theatre, beautiful Gone with the Winds with big chandeliers and everything. And it was very moving, and a big choir opened, and we were sort of like 1% white of the true black audience. That was just wonderful. And when the music started, Greg just stood out totally at the front. He was down the front, dancing by himself and clapping wildly, and it was just so hilarious. And at the intermission, some wonderful black lady came up to us, and she said, "What's a white boy doing dancing like that?" She said to us. And she said, "Baby, you got to let the left-hand side of your brain go and let the right brain take you." And that really said it all. We said, "Oh, right, okay." We went back in, and Al Green jumped off the stage in this white suit, and it was just amazing. And so it was, it was so great. And so the musical culture and the people of New Orleans made a huge impression on Greg, and he would return to make it his home, as Kim and Kelly were saying, and being such a generous soul and larger than life character in his own right, he really did become a deep fabric and part of the patina of the place, and as Kim said, he was so connected and loved, and wherever we went, Greg was never one to queue anyway, so he'd always, but in the end, he didn't have to queue. He'd just slip on through, or we'd be at the back doors of gigs, or we'd turn up at the railway station, and we'd all be dressed up to the nines, and it was always just an epic thing to there. So it was always a treat to go and see him, and we'll feel very fortunate for that, to be able to do that. And I'll just have mine. I'm just going to grab some water here. As Kelly was saying before, I was one of those people on that bus, the yellow bus, on Greg and Laurie's wedding. Well, Paul and Fred, who's here, and Diana, and that was just truly fantastic time. And Greg was just so proud to have us there as Kiwis, and they called us the Kiwi contingency. We, we were just treated marvellously. It was so great. And as Kelly also said, costuming is taken very seriously in New Orleans, and there was this sort of the lead up to the wedding. There was days of shows and things, and Greg sent us to see this lovely gay couple, good friends of his, who were costumers. And he said to us before we left, he said, whatever you do, don't come back dressed as gay Romans. Like that. And we certainly got the last laugh when we got back. We just looked fantastic. Well, we thought we did. And Paul has sort of this, nymph fire suit G-string outfit on. And to be seen, like, the way these people dressed you up was just absolutely fabulous. And on the day of the wedding itself, everyone got their outfits on, and the sort of makeup artist came in and painted everybody up, and then Rock drove us in the bus to and from his own wedding, and that was truly something. And this amazing band, Locos Poquana, and they've been nominated for an Emmy a couple of days before. 11-piece big Latin band, and you really got an idea of actually how big Rock's feet were, because he had these huge 6-inch platform boots on that were just like the big leather red moon suit, and he was just grinning splendidly, at the whole thing. He's just, very, very proud of it and things. So, many things of the man, but I just, I love him so much and he came one day, to Paikok, where I was living on the beachfront there in my house, and I was so excited to have him there. He'd come with Bethany at the time, and we were sitting in the view of the window, and he said, "Why don't we get on the roof?" And I thought, it never occurred to me to get on the roof of the house. I thought, that's a great idea. Thought the view was good enough. Okay, we'll get on the roof. So next minute we're up on the roof, so we're sitting there, and he pointed up at the hill out there, and he said, the Paikok Hill, and he said, "I'm going to tandem jump you off that tomorrow." I went, really? Okay. So the next morning, I find myself standing sort of strapped to Greg's chest like this, looking out with not a breath of wind at all, absolutely glass calm. And we're sitting there, and Greg's trying to get the chute to catch, and no chute at all. And then eventually said to me, he said, "Hall, we're going to run to the edge of the cliff, we're going to die, and the chute's going to open." And I said, okay then, and we ran to the edge of the cliff and just did this leap of faith off the face of it, and the chute took, and we did 2 turns like this, just missed the fisherman's table and landed on the beach at Paikok. It was one of the most exhilarating things I've ever done. I'll miss him for that sort of behaviour. Anything was possible. So so I shall leave you with that. But we'll miss him greatly. He's a very fantastic man. He brought a lot of excitement to a lot of people, and great inspiration. So thank you.
I've seen some of Mike's dancing injuries. Bill, are you going to come and have some words? There were just so many times where Rock took you to places that you could never have done otherwise. I mean, other of my friends do the same for me, but he was great at that. I think I wanted to reflect on my mihi when I got here, and how that would go for Rock. His name I've already been through. After that, what would be Rock's mountain? He loved the mountains, but I think the Grand Tetons were probably his spiritual home, up in the mountains. His river was the sky. He started off traveling more than anyone I knew. He would take to places in planes, and then he got into kites, and he would fly in the sky. His ocean would be the Caribbean, perhaps, with his house in Cabarete. And his waka was his wing. taking him there. His tribe, there was not one tribe. Rock had so many tribes, and he was integral in those tribes. He was truly a part of the sports scene that he was in. He became a very, very competitive paraglider. He was truly integrated into the music scene in New Orleans. As Mike said, you didn't queue. You didn't even need tickets when you were with Rock. You went in through the VIP door. I remember going to his wedding, and just by chance, my favorite act at the time, this guy was playing in town that night. Rock had half a dozen tickets. There were about 15 of us. And I was just beside myself that I wouldn't get into this thing. We turn up, the owner of the club comes out, takes us in through the back entrance, and I get one of the peak experiences of my life. Amazing. The Burning Man tribe. Burning Man, it's something I would not have gone to. It just didn't really register on my radar. I'd seen the art and I thought it looked like a pretty amazing time, but I didn't think it was me. And Rock rang me and said, "Why don't you come to Burning Man?" And I said, "I just don't know if it's me, mate." And he said, "Well, I'm building this art car. It's this beautiful big bus, and we go out and we party in the desert." And I thought, man, if he did that anywhere else, even if it was just me and him, if he built something like that, I'd join him. And so he made me go to Burning Man. And that was a tribe that really only meets once a year, but very important to each other and very important to him. And, he was a tribe of Kiwis too. He never forgot his roots. And so he would come back here and share everything he had with us. And we got to enjoy so many things because of Rock being one of us. Such a larger-than-life character. Jen talks about having a competitive life with him. Not as competitive as me, Nolan, because when I first met Rock, we met on a TV quiz show where we were head to head, and he kicked my butt. And I'm not sure if I've ever forgiven him for that really, but I forgive you, Rock. Yeah. So yeah, a truly great friend, a truly great man to have had in my life. Julian Ray, so hard for you to lose your son, Kim and Kelly. And I know there's family here, extended family. It's hard to believe. I guess we've got to accept it. We'll miss him. Would anyone else like to come and have any brief words, tell a story, just one thing that they might like to say that they recall about Rock? My brother John.
G'day, I'd just like to clarify something that Mike said about getting dressed up as a Ronin. We all managed not to, except you, Mike.
Anyone?
No, I haven't written another speech. I am reading something out that was sent to us by one of Greg's best mates, Rob Whittle, who travelled with Kim to go to the US to help with the search. Rob and Kim had never met each other before, and then they proceeded to spend the next 3 weeks joined at the hip and travelling for 3 days from Nevada to New Orleans in Greg's 4 days, in his big camper thing. So they got to know each other really well. So Rob has sent this through. and he wanted us to read this out. So I hope I'm going to do it justice. Although a part of me is very broken with your sudden departure from our lives, another part of me is flourishing. My love and appreciation for you and the brotherhood we shared has now been galvanized into my spirit. Way back, when we first met in an early paragliding comp in the US, it was obvious that two misfits had been united. It took a little time to work each other out, but once we understood that we were singing from the same songbook, life just became more interesting and compelling around you. Yeah, I don't know if it was sinning or singing, but however. The fun level dial got turned to 11 when we rented a log cabin in Driggs in Idaho, taking us out into the snow to share our passion, hiking up Glory Bowl in the moonlight to draw our lines on the way down. Then those summers in France when you would camp in my living room, turning it into a bomb site, we would fly and mountain bike the beautiful days away. Next on the radar was Dominican Republic for daily kite surfing and motocross adventures. Probably our heyday, looking back at it now. My trips down to New Orleans were always full on. You taking me to the best shows in town, expanding my appreciation of the fine arts, the fun building the Lady Sassafras, and the ensuing good time at Burning Man will never be forgotten. Greg, my friend, you were truly one of a kind. Bull in a china shop, traveller, explorer of the limits of life, poetic writer, psychonaut of the holy order, risk taker, thinker, lover, and most importantly, a brother to me and many others. Intellectually astute, quick-witted, and painfully correct, except for when you were wrong. You affected many people just with your infectious intelligence and zest for life. Your ability to communicate across a wide bandwidth was sublime. You could be friends with a neurosurgeon or a bum on the street without prejudice. It was not all roses, and you could be one hell of a stubborn fool sometimes, but this comment pales into insignificance compared to what you brought to the table with whoever sat at it. There are many people around the globe struggling to let you go, unfortunately, but you've left behind a rainbow of intense colour and magic that will live on forever. Thank you for giving us so much inspiration while expanding our minds in so many ways. I look forward to catching you up one day in the next place of light and love. Rob Whittle.
Thanks, Kelly.
I'm hopeless with this thing. Ray, would you like to come up and say your words? This is going to be the end of the service, and following that we're going to have tea and refreshments and snacks in the kitchen.
Yeah.
That way.
Thank you. There's been some wonderful stories here today, and we appreciate the people that have travelled a long way for this service today. There's a hang of a lot of people. There's so many people we could thank, but and there's possibly I could carry on and tell some of the stories that we've been involved, Julie and I, when we've been to the States, but not many of them would beat that, some of the stories. But as a boy, he was very interested in motorbikes, and I was proud of that because I was interested in motorbikes. But at the same time, we're very, very proud of what he's achieved on the world stage. And at the same time, we're gutted that this has happened. And I hope that there's been a few lessons learned in the flying world. And we've got a representative here from Queenstown today in the flying world. and we've had a good talk about various things. And these little shocks are quite bad when accidents happen like this. So we hope that some people will learn from it. There's such a lot of people I would like to thank. The Harlequins Rugby Club have been great support to us here today, and they've just bent over backwards to make sure that we're comfortable here, and the little exercise outside, the Dixieland band. The Dixieland band was wonderful, and as I say, there's just unbelievable amount of support to keep us going. And Julie and I and Kelly and Kim and Michael would just like to thank everyone for coming here today and supporting us. Thank you. There will be a cup of tea through in the dining room, and the bar will be open shortly, and we can have a chat over everything. Thank you very much.